It is told in the words and from the perspective of the power wielders, and with no view from outside the walls. And that's really, I think, in a nutshell, the problem with so much of the coverage in Washington, is that the habits of mind that inform it, the sympathies that inform it, are all with the people at the top and not with the people outside the palace.
The biggest joke, I think, in Washington is the idea that the press has an adversarial relationship to the city it covers and to the class of politicians and bureaucrats that it covers, when in fact it is so far from their adversary, it's a component of their life. It's a vicarious member of the same club. The adversarial definition is part of the self-flattery, the self-adoration with which the press conceives of its role and justifies its role to the public, who, of course, would like to think that there was a watchdog instead of a lapdog in Washington. They aren't so lucky.
Inside the club, it's getting hard to tell anymore who's the reporter and who's the politician. These days, they sometimes just spin together in Washington's revolving door.
I used to worry about blurred lines. Now the lines, they're not even blurred. They're gone. The lines are gone. I mean, people pop in and out of administrations all the time. Jim Fallow, speechwriter for Jimmy Carter, then national correspondent for The Atlantic. I mean, it just, I didn't like it at first, but it's a phenomenon of our time, of the 80s and 90s, that people are going to work in politics and go into journalism, and they're going to pop back and forth.
No, I don't think Bob Dole's a mean person. I think he's an undisciplined person. And
the most notorious case of media cross-dressing involved ABC commentator George Will.
George Will helped to prep Ronald Reagan for a presidential debate with papers that had been stolen in a black propaganda operation from Jimmy Carter's campaign. Having helped in that obscene prep, he then went on the air as an objective commentator later that night to say that he thought Reagan, viewing it objectively, dispassionately, fair-mindedly, even-handedly, and so on, had done best in the debate, rating the horse that he'd been secretly training. Paid no price for it.
More than anyone, political analyst David Gergen seems stuck in the revolving door.
Bob, you decided to call this book the choice that voters must make this November.
After working for Presidents Nixon, Ford, and Reagan, Gergen began writing for U.S. News and World Report and appearing on McNeil Lehrer. Then he returned to politics as a Clinton advisor, and now he's back in the media.
When you click on that set, you sort of have to say, what to yourself? Am I seeing David Gergen, the thoughtful journalist, as he sometimes is, or am I seeing a guy who fairly recently was in the employ of Bill Clinton as a paid propagandist? Sometimes even I find the lines too blurry to follow the action.
Through propaganda, we can derogate our opponents and dehumanize them. You know, we didn't refer to Germans, we referred to Huns. We didn't refer to Italians, we referred to, as you know, we didn't refer to Vietnamese, we referred to Gooks. So Huns and Wops and Gooks and Japs were the short circuit that we would take to dehumanize our adversaries and to reduce them to a sub level.
The time, the middle of the 19th century. The place, the American West. The Armed Forces Screen Magazine presents the covered wagon, backbone of the Western trek, didn't stand a chance when it was traveling alone through hostile country. When attack came, the covered wagon could protect itself only if it banded together with other wagons. This was mutual defense. This was mutual security. We as a nation are able to live a peaceful life, but hanging over us all is the specter of a haunting and horrible fear.
The medium weight force is clearly the force of the future. It's a cavalry type force, and clearly the Indians are out there. That's politically incorrect, but we're dealing with cavalry and Indians again, and the cavalry is what we need.
In order to stop saboteurs armed with atomic explosives, we could search all planes and trains and boats and automobiles crossing our borders from now on. We could open every single package we could remain on a constant 24-hour, day in, day out alert.
Man muss nämlich gut regieren und für eine gute Regierung auch eine gute Propaganda betreiben. Das eine gehört zum anderen. Eine gute Regierung ohne Propaganda kann ebenso wenig bestehen wie eine gute Propaganda ohne eine gute Regierung. Beide müssen sich
I was raised in a milieu where I was taught that communism leads to dictatorship and that capitalism leads to democracy. But it's not that simple.
The essence of a politician, of the political animal, is the pursuit of power.
You can say what you want about this country, and I love this place. I love the freedoms we used to have. I love it. I love that.
So what do they get when they are elected to office? They get power, not money, power.
Free market capitalism definitely democratizes a country and a culture. But corporate crony capitalism, of the kind we're seeing with this White House, is as antithetical to democracy in America as it is in Nigeria.
Power of concentrated wealth shall not be abused.
Americans have to understand the difference between free market capitalism, which benefits our country, and this kind of corporate crony capitalism where we have large corporations running our government, and there's a name for that, and the name is fascism.
And we know now that government by organized money is just as dangerous as government by organized mob.
A need to dominate, a need to control, and again, above all, a need to dominate.
The politicians are put there to give you the idea that you have freedom of choice. You don't. You have no choice. You have owners. They own you. They own everything.
Big Brother is watching you. And the little people.
Obedient workers. Obedient workers. People who are just smart enough to run the machines and do the paperwork and just dumb enough to passively accept all these increasingly shittier jobs with the lower pay, the longer hours, the reduced benefits, the end of overtime, and the vanishing pension that disappears the minute you go to collect it. And now they're coming for your Social Security money.
It's not a conspiracy.
And what he found was no criminal conspiracy.
It can't really be a conspiracy.
There's no conspiracy?
No conspiracy.
Everyone is saying the exact same thing on the exact same day. It's almost as if there was some kind of, I don't know. What's the word I'm looking for? Some sort of larger plan.